Hello everybody.
Next up we've got Everton away. Kick-off on Sundays at 2:15 p.m, and with other games being postponed due to a lack of available emergency service resources, this game's now been picked up by Sky for broadcast. Everton then, well, they're currently in 16th place, which is 2 places above on us, which is only on goal difference though. They're one of only 2 teams in the league without a win, Leicester being the other, and they've drawn 4 of the 6 they've played so far. They opened up with a brace of defeats at home to Chelsea 1-0 and 2-1 away at Villa, before steadying the ship a little bit with 3 consecutive 1-1 draws at home to Forest and away at Brentford and Leeds. Their last outing before the break was a goalless draw at home to their neighbours. They are of course managed by Frank Lampard Jr. for the time being. His continued employment in top flight of football is something of a mystery when you actually look at his CV, but there you go. They spent most of last season with a very real chance of going down for the first time since we last had a king, and it was only the dismal form of Burnley that saved them really. They did manage to secure safety on the penultimate game of the season, a win against Palace finally securing their status, but as it was they finished a mere 4 points clear of the trapdoor. Relegation would be a bit of a disaster for them, with rumours of there being all sorts of financial issues, exacerbated by the sanctions placed on Alisher Usmanov, who was a partner with club owner Farhad Moshiri in the company who thought it was worth paying Everton something like £13 million for the naming rights to their training ground. This was a deal that raised many eyebrows. That sum would have been a lot for Goodison, never mind the training ground, where nobody was going to bother using the corporate name in a million years. Events in the Ukraine saw Everton sever all former ties with Usmanov, who nevertheless remains apparently a close associate of Moshiri. The building of a new stadium in the docks is also a bit of a financial drain. Construction was started in 2021 and there's an estimated completion date of 2024. All of which means that a very, very close eye is being kept on the club's finances, with Leeds and Burnley going as far as to go a long way down the road of legal action against the Premier League last season. One of the allegations was that the amount of losses the club allocated to COVID, which are disregarded for financial fair play purposes, was a lot bigger than most other clubs. Leeds, for example, allocated £24 million specifically to COVID, whilst our total loss for the same period only came to £65 million. Everton attributed an eye-watering £170 million out of a £378 million loss to COVID. Having received legal assurances from the Premier League, the threats were dropped, but I'm sure my learned friends will be keeping an eye. Daisy informed me that they actually managed to spend something like £85 million during the window, though the majority of that was financed by the sale of Richarlison to Spurs. Having said that, the first arrival of the summer cost them absolutely nothing in transfer fees, though one suspects that James Tarkowski's agent ensured that some of that saving went on a signing-on fee. Tarkowski jumped ship from Burnley, his contract rather conveniently expiring at the conclusion of their relegation season. They weren't quite as fortunate when picking over the Turf Moor carcass to bring in Dwight McNeil. His £20 million fee is said to include add-ons, though. Now, for some bizarre reason for which I can honestly supply no adequate explanation, other than perhaps old age, I've always got McNeil confused with Damari Gray, which at least is now slightly less of an issue, given they're now at least at the same club. During the summer, you couldn't pick up a paper or turn on a website without reading of how we were going to sign Amadou Onana from Lille any minute now. A fee of £33 million had been agreed, and it was just a matter of sorting out a few details. Those few details proved a bit too rich for our liking, allegedly, and so he ended up on Merseyside. Now, I debated long and hard about making fun on the biblical connotations to be obtained with reference to the player's surname, but hey, he'll probably get called that apposite name anyway without any reference to its aptness or otherwise, so I'll just leave that one be. Another £15 million went on Brighton striker Neil Maupay. He's been capped at various age levels by the French, but does in fact have an Argentinian mum. This prompted him to send out a message earlier on this year to former Hammer Lionel Len Scaloni, who's currently managing the Argentinian national side, to hint that Maupay was available for selection. However, to date, Daisy can find no response to his unsubtle hint, and his home trophy cabinet remains undisturbed by Argentinian commemorative headwear. Another £15 million, or more accurately £9 million plus add-ons, went on Manchester United midfielder James Garner. He hasn't made a first 11 appearance for the Toffees as yet, but he's best remembered for his role as Californian private eye Jim Rockford in The Rockford Files, a 1970s TV series that possessed one of the greatest opening sequences and title music of all time. You sure that's right, Daisy? Really? Okay. Moving on, they also spent £2 million on Senegalese midfielder Idrissa Gueye. He left Everton for PSG 3 years ago, and the fee Everton paid this time round is £28 million less than the £30 million they received for him when he made the trip in the opposite direction. This represents a decent deal financially, though the depreciation factor is yet to be confirmed. They were a bit busy, weren't they? Leicester City standing keeper Eldin Jakupovic arrived on a free to perform understudy duties for Jordan Pickford, and to the mix we can add a couple of loans in the form of ex-Wolves and current Sporting left-back Ruben Vinagre and current Wolves defender Connor Cody. They have a lot of injuries to mention. Townsend, Godfrey, Mina, Holgate and Pickford are all definitely out for this game, whilst there are doubts over Calvert-Lewin and Doucouré, though the former is said to be more likely to be available than the latter. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. Now, I'm not one to stereotype all Americans. I know some splendid people from that part of the world, and I always wince when people portray them en masse as a loud-mouthed bunch of ignoramuses. However, sometimes they don't help themselves, do they? Yes, that's you I'm talking about, Todd Bowley, to whom the old adage about it being better to stay silent and thought of as stupid than it is to open your gob and remove all doubt definitely applies. Let's have an all-star game like they do in America was his latest offering. Well, quite apart from the fact that nobody knows when it could actually be played, those of a certain age might point out that we've already tried that, sort of. In the 1950s and 1960s, it became a tradition for a match to be staged between an England 11 and an England under-23 side, usually billed as England v Young England. This game was played for about 15 years on the Friday night, before the Cup final. Attendances declined year on year to the extent that it was decided to replace the fixture with something even fewer people wanted, an FA Cup third-fourth place playoff. They persisted with that for a few years before making it a post-season or pre-season effort, and eventually, with so few people wanting to watch the match, they put it out of our misery. Now, in the exceedingly unlikely event that Bowley gets his way, look out for big matches also to be reduced in length so that we can have a spectacular half-time show. Though, what with budgets being a lot smaller this side of the Atlantic, we'd probably end up with Ed Bloody Sheeran, or worse still, Jedward, who somehow managed to confirm on Twitter that they're as intelligent as they are talented, not that confirmation when needed. So, if somebody could point out what a daft idea it is to Bowley, perhaps he could then go back to his day job of firing managers. Let's move on to us. Well, Thursday night there was sort of good, bad and ugly. I thought we played well for much of the first half. There was some good stuff on show overturning that 1-0 deficit. Quick word about the disallowed goal. Now, I've had a look at it a million times, and I've spotted there's another foul on Emerson in addition to the rather soft one given on Areola, and I think that may have been the call. Certainly the mime the referee did showed more in common with the push on Emerson than the rather soft arm across Areola. VAR would have made absolutely no difference, the whistle having gone eons before the ball went in, and if you still have any sympathy for them over that, think about this. It was never a corner in the first place. Skamaka's goal was a beaut, and the move that led to Emerson's shot was also a thing of beauty, even if Dawson's shoulder from the resulting corner was kind of less so. Second half, though, we stunk the place out. Stringing passes together was something for other people to do, and we sort of seemed bereft of attacking intent. Considering a goal from our own corner was something I kind of hoped we got out of our system years ago. Apparently not. In the end, we had Areola and Soufal to thank for the 3 points. Still, 3 points they were, and when your priority is to get out of the group, with the bonus of a week off for finishing top, that and the other result in the group were really all that really mattered. The match did highlight one of the differences between last season and this. Now, last season we had a first 11 or so with not an awful lot of depth. This season we have the depth, but when you have a strong squad, as opposed to a strong team, you then have the twin issues of bedding in the new players and in establishing what your probably strongest starting 11 would be when everyone's fit. It's a nice problem to have, but still a problem of sorts. On the injury front, with Cresswell and Ballon back in the mix, we're now down to Aguiar and Johnson on the injury list, so we've virtually got a full squad to pick from. Prediction? Well, I'm tempted to go for a win, but I've got to factor in the post-Europe factor. And, we never play well when we've been on an away trip like that. So you'll find me tempering things just a little bit. So I'm going off for a draw on this one. The £2.50 I might have put towards a ticket for the All-Star game is going down the digital broadband to Mr. Winston to be wagered on a 2-2 draw. Enjoy the game.
So we're here in the offices of a Late Late Show with the host of a Late Late Show, James Corden.
Hi.
Big West Ham fan.
Yes. And big knees up Mother Brown, man.
Yeah.
Get on the forum at kumb.com. Come on, you irons.